We made a little more headway on our neighbor's property. I'm gonna take a look at that in a moment, but part of the reason why we haven't made more update videos on that is we just finished up shipping, and that was a major push. And then yesterday we got 37 yards of sawdust, which we had to dig out in order to get out of our garage. And so a lot of moving parts right now. Worked in the garden all day yesterday, but I'm gonna share some notes on how the lawn to food forest progression is happening. That's gonna be a fun project. Another couple hundred wheelbarrow loads and we'll be done. I definitely want to make another update video on these chickens. They're having a nice time right now that things are thawed out. That'll be for another video. Maybe a quiet chicken TV will take a break from me blabbing about stuff. I'm gonna walk through this little channel between our spot and the neighbor's spot. It's lovely having this fence up. The amount of birds that have been sitting on the edge pooping out seeds for apple trees and cherry trees, so we can graft some things over. But this little alleyway between us will eventually fill into a complete wall of food-bearing trees because of the work these birds are doing. But another apple tree, and graft somebody else onto that. So the other day I talked about the plantings down by the road. I can link here if you're interested in seeing those. It's about the start of the privacy barrier and some nut trees down there. Still have to design in and figure out the shadier, very wet spot in here. Very heavy on black currants we plan to go. Rained a little last night, so that helps reveal even more the hints that were in the lawn of where water is going to be. So we won't plant right in there, so we reserve the option to dig that out. And but yesterday I had a little bit of time and started adding in some more layers. Planted out right in the middle here, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are Asian pear rootstocks, very thorny, very gnarly, fast-growing rootstocks. I had grafted Asian pears onto them a year ago. The grafts didn't take, and so I'm planting out just the rootstock with the hopes that they're spiky enough, they're feral enough to outgrow deer and rabbit browse. I'm not going to protect these, and if they get above my height and do really well, we can graft them over with the idea that 4 of these trees could be grafted to multi-graft, so it might be a little row of Asian pears. It's a question mark whether or not they'll be adapted to how wet it is here. But then running north-south, here's a line of elderberry. It's an unnamed variety, and then a line of some incredibly superb black currant varieties. Now the black currants, these, believe it or not, and we'll get some videos today, our good friend Juan's going to be coming to work with us, and so I'm going to hopefully get some shots of us all working together with a nice safe distance, but moving forward on it. 2 plants, I dug them up, I had stool layered them a ways back, so they were well rooted, and I was able to pull apart and cut apart from 2 plants. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 divisions. So 6 solid divisions from each plant with roots. It's one of the main reasons why I love growing black currant so much. So this is a row here now that will produce an abundant crop of black currants this year. So there's no real waiting on this. And the elderberry, I lost the tag, but it's either Bob Gordon or Wildwood. It doesn't really matter, it's elderberry. And they're very small right now. The hope is that the proximity with the black currants is that it'll keep the deer a little less excited, but we'll see. I don't think I'm gonna go and put the effort to fence each one of these by any stretch. We'll just overplant them, some will get chewed and it'll work out in the end. And part of the layout and the design here, let me look at it from the sun angle. So here I'm looking at it from the south to the north. And of course, early morning light comes in, late day light. And so the design in here is such that the black currants will top out at about 6 feet or so. The elderberry top out at about 8 to 10 feet. But everybody here is very malleable as far as pruning. And so the idea is that we're creating this bump that will allow some light in, have a middle element that's tallest, and then a shorter side, so late day sun can still hit the elderberry, and the currants, which like a little bit of shade, can be a little bit under the elderberry. It still is open whether or not we're going to keep this avenue open and mow for this season. I'm inclined to actually put a row of white currants or pink currants in here, which get to be about 3 or 4 feet tall. So we have a ramp up, and then on this side we would do red currants or raspberries or something else that isn't very tall. So tall layer in the middle, a ramp of light access. It's pretty easy to say, well, wait a minute, dude, you've got like a 1-foot walkway through the middle. And yes, it's very tight in here, but as a nursery, we could be taking cuttings from these as needed and selling them, or giving them away, guerrilla planting them. We could be pruning branches that get in the way of the middle and kind of doing an informal fan or espalier training, kind of like make them a little flatter rather than fatter bushes, or cutting the elderberry and using it as a mulch to provide food to the other plants. So there's a lot of options here. And again, if we're not being precious, then really the pattern is to plant as tight as possible and adjust later on. But the more contiguous and solid we plant, the less mowing, the less weeding, and the more it gets on with it and becomes a food forest. We've got this whole line of comfrey planted right along the fence, which I talked about in other videos. Right now the hay is being staged on top of them. That's fine, they're not awake just yet. And what I'm doing is, as I go to plant these, if I need a little more soil here or there, if I want to berm up because the planting hole is just so wet, I'm starting to rob a little bit of soil. So the comfrey's here, the grass is here, and so I'm taking little scoops as needed, kind of chipping away at making a little overflow valve for water. You can see as soon as I dig out, it fills with water. That's how wet we are here. Question might be, and this is a very reasonable one, well, you're digging near comfrey and moving that soil. Aren't you going to propagate comfrey? Yeah, probably, maybe, I don't know. It's fine. I'm not taking this soil and putting it in a raised garden bed for annuals. I'm scooping out this comfrey question mark soil and using it to build up soil around a black currant. If comfrey sprouts here, I'd be very happy to have it there. We can cut it, use it to be as a mulch, because again, we really don't want to have to depend on external inputs of hay and wood chips in the future. So spontaneous popping of comfrey in here, very compatible with the long-term plan of having a mulch right on site. So I'll keep robbing soil from this boundary between the comfrey and the lawn as needed to fill in and bulk out the soil around these shrubs, with the idea that I'm aware that comfrey may very well be spreading into areas where we want it, and we'll have a release valve to have water channelized down and through. I think when our friend Juan gets here, we'll focus on the shadier spot in there, focus on doing blackcurrant cuttings, which we'll take some video of, and making a bridge between this new orchard planting block, minor fruit, berry, medicine orchard, and the road nut shelter sort of space, and think about some more diversity in there. Yesterday when I was planting this part, Sasha said she'd like to see a little bit more mix and play in here. So maybe this row will be pink and white and red currants, maybe some black currants. It'll be a medley. We'll have to see. Part of me is thinking it's nice to have the idea of production and uniform rows a little bit, so it makes it easier to manage and harvest. But we should probably split the difference and have it be a little more feral and wild and playful too. So that'll be the next step, but that's your update for now. Now I gotta work on this sawdust pile. It's big enough that it actually dwarfs the size of my truck right behind it. 37 yards is no joke. For being staying at home and not going out, this is a nice sort of situation. A friend of mine brought a full 14 yards up to my focus spot, so as soon as I get up there to visit and help them out, that'll be the job up there. Really quick highlight reel here is we're taking apart the compost that heated this greenhouse. I'm backlogged on doing updates on a lot of these videos just because we're so busy with what we're trying to tackle. But the compost that came from there is now getting spread out into some of these gardens. I've got that PEX circuit to put away. We're doing dumps of the sawdust to bulk out our pathways. We'll be making more videos on all this, but trying to really concurrently finalize shipping and local bare root handoff to folks. We've been offering up that we can wrap up plants and leave them in our driveway for folks to pick up with gloves if they want to be on the safe side. There's just a lot of moving parts right now trying to get ready for spring, and it's exciting and a little overwhelming. But thank you for being part of this whole process. So we'll connect with you once we make some more headway on the expanding lawn to food forest orchard on the outside of that fence.